The thing about AI, whether you like it or not, it's just so incredibly darn useful. And I predict that eventually everybody who is on the fence about AI will eventually come across a pain point that AI solves, which will essentially convince them that it's an okay thing. But the problem is, most people don't actually realize just how useful AI can be. They think it's just for writing articles and books and essays, or creating art out of nothing with no compensation for the artist. So in this video, I'm actually going to show you 3 more unusual use cases that are nevertheless extremely useful, at least in my business, and hopefully a lot of you will find it useful as well. This is particularly important for authors, although some of these could be useful outside of just the author and writing space. For the first one, now I don't know how many authors out there can relate to this, but usually if I'm writing a scene and I get to a high action scene, I often freeze up because with an action scene, you have to choreograph every single little thing that happens. And sometimes it's a different way of thinking about the scene compared to dialogue or emotion or character arcs and things like that I often have trouble figuring it out. So in the past, what I would do is I would just kind of go with the flow and figure it out as I go and just write one section of the fight scene at a time without really planning it out in advance. The problem with this is that it ended up being a little bit bare bones and not really satisfying enough as an action scene. Action scenes are actually a little bit difficult to do on paper because you don't have those visuals. And so I've been using AI to actually choreograph a fight scene for me, which makes it so much easier to write that actual scene out. Now, I don't have a specific prompt that can be copy and pasted for this because it's essentially just giving the AI context about what your scene is about and then just asking it to choreograph ensuing fight scene. So for mine, here is an example from a book that I am currently working on. I have a scene in my gothic fantasy novel where a character, Mina Harker, who is a vampire, has a fight scene with one of the brides of Dracula. Mina is accompanied by Van Helsing, Jonathan Harker, and Sherlock Holmes. They are awakened during a voyage on a ship just as it's passing by Gibraltar headed towards England. It is nighttime. The bride arrives and Mina is forced to fight her. Please choreograph this fight scene, keeping in mind that they are both vampires. Give it to me in a bullet point format. And so what this should do is just give me a blow-by-blow description of what the fight scene should be. And here we go. All right, and it's given me a breakdown here. Now, it did give me some stuff that isn't really important, like setting the scene and the initial confrontation. That's all stuff that I would have written already. I'm just interested in the fight, and that didn't begin until about here. Mina lunges first, propelled by a lightning-quick speed, aiming a strike at the bride's throat with her claws extended. The bride counters by ducking unnaturally low, her body bending as if boneless, and sweeps Mina's legs from beneath her. Mina twists midair, landing cat-like, and lashes out with a kick that sends the bride sliding across the deck. And it goes on with intensifying combat, supernatural displays, tactical assistance from Mina's companions, and it goes on and on. Now, this may end up being too big of a fight scene, and so you can easily just communicate that to the AI. For instance, I could just say, I'm only interested in the fight scene itself, none of the preamble and setup. Also, can you make it more concise with the fight not being too drawn out? And here it goes, starting immediately with the fight scene. Mina lunges at the bride, claws slashing for her throat, but the bride bends unnaturally low. Kind of the same stuff that we had before. And now we have a much more concise fight scene here. It did give me a warning that this may violate the content usage policies. I don't think it did, so I gave that a thumbs down, but I can see why it would have been triggered a little bit by this, but it did still write the fight scene. And this is actually pretty decent. I could go with this and just write out the scene myself. And since I have these beats there, I could easily just write those, or I can take them into AI and allow the AI to write the first draft, after which I would edit that. But regardless, this is a pretty well choreographed fight scene, and I have found myself using AI quite frequently for this type of outlining. Even though I'm someone who likes to do all of my outlining myself, this is one area where I know that the AI is good enough to be able to do a good job with minimal oversight from me, so I just allow it to do its thing and then I go through and correct it. Now, if you're watching this video and you would like to write a book yourself but you don't know where to start, I would invite you to check out my Story Hacker Gold membership. This is the best way to get in contact with me and to have me actually answer your questions. And additionally, when you join, I will walk you through my step-by-step process to not only write and finish your book, but also to publish it and to market it and have the tools in place to be able to effectively market that book. Literally, all you have to do is just follow my steps. It's a very simple process that you can get going with just starting today. The price is going up soon because I'm in the process of hiring a developmental editor and someone to focus on AI art, as well as good principles of graphic design so that they can better help you to create all of the assets and things that you need for your book, as well as improve the actual quality of your output, because a lot of AI authors don't really know what makes a book good. And so that's why I have my developmental editor in there to help with that process to get you to understand what makes a good book. And the best part is I have 3 different books for authors that you will get for free as soon as you join the membership. And there's a 7-day free trial, so you can come in, take a look. There's absolutely no obligation to stay, but go ahead and hit the link down below and start that 7-day free trial today. And hopefully I'll see you there. All right. The second more unique opportunity that AI can really help you with is anything that is data entry based. This is another thing that I can't necessarily give you clear guidelines on what this should look like, because the many different data entry use cases out there are so diverse that I could not possibly cover all of them. In fact, I'll show you one example that I just created for myself that is so niche that I don't think anybody else would be using this in the exact same way, but for me, saved me a ton of time. A lot of people don't know this, but I have a website called pulpuniversity.com. This is more of a hobby site for me. It's not something that I actively work on like a business. It's just something that I kind of enjoy. I enjoy cataloging things and stuff like that just in my spare time. And so I've been cataloging different pulp fiction magazines, and it looks something like this. This is for Weird Tales, where we have a way of getting your hands on a copy of the PDF, or if there's a Kindle version, I have that here. We have the name of the issue, the date, the editor of the issue, and the artist of the issue. And then if you expand it, it gives you all of the different short stories that are included in that issue. Now, I did get all of this information from a separate source. There is a site out there that really well documents all of the different magazines out there, but unfortunately, it's just in a format that is very, very hard to quantify and to organize. It's extremely hard to find what you're looking for. And so what I thought I would do, before AI came around, I already started this process where I would basically manually enter all of these things into a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet would be rendered here on the website via a WordPress plugin that I have. But to show you what this looks like here on the page where I got all this information, it looks like this. There's the list of magazines like this, and it's just a lot of text, and it's really hard to sort through. There's no search function. There's no way to really find what you're looking for very clearly. Plus, the naming convention is often very different depending on what magazine we're looking on. Some of them have editors, some of them don't. Some of them have cover artists listed, some of them don't. And one thing that bothers me is that they've got this code here. Right here, you see that says SS, NV, NV, and all of these mean like short story is what SS, and NV, I believe, is novel or novella, one of the two. And they have a whole bunch of others. That's just not very clear to me. Furthermore, in order to format this in a bulleted list like you see here, I have to actually convert what you see in this list of data into HTML. All of that takes an inordinately long amount of time. And for this magazine in particular, there's over 300 issues to document. So to add the HTML to this by myself and to convert all of these different codes into the thing that they represent so that it's clear that, oh, this is a short story, this is a novel, this is a novella, etc. It's just a big headache and cost me way too much time. And if I were to hire a data entry person, it would have cost them way too much time that it would then cost me a lot of money. And it was just not viable. Well, recently I figured out a prompt that basically solved all my problems for me. And I went into ChatGPT and created a GPT. So just to show you what this GPT looks like, this is what the GPT says. It says, your task is to take data that I provide you about individual pulp magazines and structure the data in a table. The table should have the following columns and so forth. And then I give it the list of columns that I need: name, date, editor, artist, and contains. And then I give it quite a bit of information about the contains column, because that's where you have the bulleted list. For instance, I have a list of all of those abbreviations and what they mean. And then I also ask it to format everything in HTML. And then I also give it an example of what a fully fleshed out version looks like. And then all I have to do is come here to this massive database right here, grab 2 or 3 or 4 of these at a time, come into ChatGPT with this GPT and run it. And just like that, it starts formatting all of the data that I need for this pulp fiction magazine. Now, again, this isn't necessarily something that authors would come into directly, but I guarantee you at some point in your author journey, you're going to have data entry needs. almost everybody does at some point. And AI, if you can figure out an exact prompt to specifically format things for your specific use case, it can be an absolute godsend. You'll notice it's getting the HTML here in this contains folder. It looks like a jumbled mess, but this is actually doing things exactly like I asked for. It converted the abbreviations there to short story, vignette, novella here. So all of that is done correctly, and now it's moving on to the next entry, and I just have to sit back here and wait, and it does all of this work for me. Saves me absolutely hours and hours of time. All right, the third use case that I think authors are going to really, really love is book descriptions. Now, a lot of people have been using AI for book descriptions to start with, and they'll just ask it for a book description of their book. I find a better way to do this is to actually go out and find examples of good book descriptions, particularly in the genre that you want to target, because sometimes a book description will differ slightly depending on what genre it's in, and then you can use that template that you create to create your book description. So I'll give you an example. This is the book A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Very great book in the kind of gas lamp fantasy genre, which is similar to one that I'm working on. So all I have to do is copy and paste this book description right here, go into ChatGPT or whatever AI program you're using. Claude works for this as well. Gemini also can do this, and say, analyze the following book description on a sentence by sentence level to understand what it's doing from a copywriting perspective. And then I just paste in that book description, and it's going to give me a very detailed analysis of the book, or of the book description, I should say, literally on a sentence by sentence basis. So it highlights the first sentence and says the purpose establishes intrigue by introducing a unique and mysterious protagonist. Techniques, it adds world building elements, tension and rarity. The hook, the phrase once upon a time black, piques curiosity about what happened to Black London. So it does this for every sentence, and as you can see, it's still going here. So now all I have to do is give it information about my book and then ask it to follow the same template. I'm not asking it to copy the same book description, but to follow a similar template, because now that we've broken it down, it's able to understand why it's using different techniques for each sentence from a copywriting perspective. And now that it has fully fleshed out and understood those techniques, it's able to apply them to the next book description that we're going to write. So all I have to do is enter in my description. So here's what I put down. Here's a book that I want to write a book description for. Write one that uses the same techniques and format as the breakdown that you've already outlined. Here's the information about my book. And then I gave it a solid paragraph describing my book and the protagonist and other things that I knew would probably be important for it to know in order to write this book description well. What you could do is you could actually put your entire book into a summary program and have it summarize the book for you. I find that putting in the information myself is a little bit better because I know what a book description is looking for. It's looking for intriguing information about the protagonist along with a description of the central conflict of the story, and ideally some kind of mystery that the story is looking for. So because I know that, I just kind of put all of that information in there. I wasn't structuring it or anything. I just did a brain dump of all of those things. And now all I have to do is hit enter, and it's going to write a book description in the same vein as the one that we had before, but specifically tailored for my book. And interestingly enough, it gave me an A/B test here. It looks like I have two responses, both written by different models. I think this model may have been either the O1 preview, perhaps even the upcoming O1 model. And this one seems to have been written by GPT-4o. And looking at the two, it actually, I like this response a little bit better. So I'm going to say I prefer this response. But it is now giving me a pretty solid book description that would be better than if I had just asked it for a book description without giving it any kind of structure or context. So for instance, this says, Mina Harker has become the very thing she once feared, a vampire stalking the shadowed streets of Victorian London. By night, she hunts the city's criminals, a nocturnal avenger confronting the evil that lurks within human hearts. Yet with each hunt, she battles the insidious thirst threatening to consume her remaining humanity. When the sinister brides of Dracula mysteriously arrive in London seeking a powerful artifact, Mina is thrust into a deadly game of shadows and deception. She must uncover their dark purpose, aided by old allies like Van Helsing and Jonathan Harker, and unexpected ones like the legendary detective Sherlock Holmes. As ancient secrets unravel and a new darkness looms, Mina must confront the legacy of Dracula himself to prevent a reign of terror. To save London and her soul, she must embrace her darkest instincts without losing who she once was. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty solid book book description. I would definitely buy this if I wasn't the one writing it. So it's not perfect. There are a few words and phrases I would probably cut here, but all in all, this is a really good solid start to my book description. And I know a lot of authors really hate the marketing process and having to do all of this marketing material. And so applying this same framework where you give it examples of good ad hooks or book descriptions or social media posts that you want it to emulate, ask it to analyze those things and then give it information about your book so it can write those things for you. Now, of course, none of this information is going to do you much good if you aren't familiar with the basics of AI and how to use AI. And I just came up with an updated 2025 version of my basics guide to AI. So you definitely should check that out before you go any further and try to apply these things for yourself. So check that video out and I will see you in the next one.